with IHA. Today we have the pleasure of hearing from the Senior Vice President of Sales, John Ray. And today he will be presenting Retail's new metric, the expert impact. John will be answering questions after the webinar, so feel free to hold on to your questions until after. It gives me great pleasure to introduce John.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to October. And for some of you, depending on how you run your businesses, welcome to the fourth quarter. Hopefully today we're going to give you some interesting things to think about as the busy season approaches, and some statistics that hopefully will give you time to sit back and pause in terms of what is the expert impact on your brand. Just to start off and dive in, when we talk to a lot of consumer goods brands and some of our retail partners, we step back and look at the business in a very simplistic formula. And the formula that we have talked about with, again, our customers and retail partners is an idea of three components: traffic, which is the output of the marketing dollars and the inputs to create brand awareness and product awareness, potentially around new products, seasonal pushes. Again, big investments made here to allow consumers to be aware of what there is to purchase and where they can purchase it. But our business is really focused on the last two pieces of this equation, which is if you have the people, the would-be buyers, what is really important is how well do you convert those buyers, and then how much do they actually spend. It is worth noting if you look at any business, you can actually derive total revenue by using this equation. And with the math, if you were to move conversion rates, considering a brand being sold in thousands of locations, if you could move conversion rates even a tenth of a point, this can have a very large impact in your total sales number, as well as the fact that if they spend just a few percentage points more, these are big numbers that we're talking about. So with that as kind of a framework, I want to also use and clarify some language. We're going to use the words today, experts, what is more commonly seen and known as brand advocates. And we really clearly feel like this is part of the marketing effort, the marketing team, the sales team for a business. These can be different people. They can be potentially on the high end paid professional or sponsored influencers and advocates. They can be users of your product that are simply just very passionate about how well and how effective they work in their day-to-day usage. What I think as consumer goods brands, we also aspire to have people who are in stores to be strong advocates or on behalf of the brands to those that they come in contact with, of course, based on where they are. And at the end of the day, what do these people do? Well, they're driving dollars for purchase. The other way to think about this, too, if you put a marketing hat on specifically, when you go out to spend marketing dollars, you're considering the channel in which that advertising or that investment goes. And each of those channels has its own defined audience. It has a specific reach in terms of how many people are listening or viewing. And in terms of frequency, I mean, depending on the program, if it's a circular or a television commercial, for example, it's going to have its airing time or its print time. But what also every channel has is a certain level of credibility. And we would also paint the similarity to brand advocates. They each have their own audience, reach, frequency, and credibility. And so they need to be treated as a unique marketing channel to help advocate for the brand. Now, there's a lot of research that says, brand advocates, make a big difference for consumer goods companies and for retailers, any business really. The question really has been, well, really, how much impact do they make? And so today what we'd like to do is talk a little bit about what impacts they can have and take you through several different ways in which we've gone out to measure that impact. And then at the end, wrap it into, well, how does that affect or impress potentially you as a consumer goods company? So here's a list. I won't go through all of them. Some of them may be stated quite obviously. We've touched on conversion rates already and AOV. But let's think also about return rates and purchase confidence. Retention rates for retail people, what we found is that it's a common thing that when people in store are more knowledgeable and more helpful for consumers, they tend to stay in those positions longer. The brand loyalty effect in terms of if someone, again, has a good purchase experience and then a good experience with the product itself, that loyalty begins to build. There's some impact on perceived and actual in-stock, which for certain brands is very important, dealing with the fact that products actually may not be on the floor, or through questioning, people actually may be coming and looking for the wrong product and maybe moved over to the appropriate one. So there's a lot of important wins from having someone that's an engaged brand advocate for a brand. So this is what we did. We said, hey, there's a lot of feel-good here, but let's look at data. And we did multiple areas in terms of pressing on this. One was with a membership, which we own as a company. Been in business for about 8 years, and in all time have had well over 1 million members consuming content from brands through our site. So we pushed on them. We did our own consumer study around the influence and impact of experts, and then looked at what the market had done with research, and there's some very interesting statistics there that we'll share. But beyond that, we felt there needed to be more. And so we've engaged in our own independent study, and we'll share some of the findings of that as well. So let's start off with what the members have to say. And what I would kind of focus in on this slide is that 79% of our membership, and these are people who are a combination of professionals in their space, individuals who work in retail stores, they were advocating or talking about brands that they represented all throughout the week. And so whether they were on the shift at the department store or at the niche retailer or not, they had the opportunity, and going back to that frequency, what kind of audience did they have, they had the opportunity to be advocates on behalf of those consumer goods brands. They also look at themselves as experts. So if they work in a particular field, a particular store, they carry themselves and in conversation with others that they have knowledge on these products, and in most cases, they're perceived as such. In terms of consumer research, more than half of consumers, when surveyed, said that they seeked out knowledge from someone who they perceived had that before they made a purchase. And that even above help in selecting a product in the store, the number one piece of information they craved from a retail sales professional was specific product knowledge to help them make a decision. So some pretty interesting statistics that give us some insights in terms of what consumers are looking for in the shopping process. Now let's go to market. Now there's a lot of data out there. These are snippets from some of the things that we have been able to aggregate. I would say a couple of these are really interesting to consider. It says that over 3/4 of shoppers actually purchased an additional item when in the store when they had an expert make that recommendation. And even though we live in a time where looking through product reviews, doing Google search, and getting a lot of information before entering a store, more than 40% of consumers still were influenced could be influenced in terms of which product, specific product or even brand they would purchase when entering the store. Impacts on average order value, very large. Over 31%, a larger basket size for those who were offered help from an expert. And then maybe just to round out here, there also is the downside. If someone comes into a store and is not helped and perceives that someone is not helpful or not knowledgeable in that store, more than 3/4 of those people will leave that location. So for everyone involved here, retailers, manufacturers, there's a lot of upside to having information and understanding of what the products are. Unfortunately, there's also downside if those people are not in the know. So let me talk a little bit about an independent study that we've done. We were able to get our hands on 2 years of sales data broken out by hour. And this data allowed us to look at individual retail associates, in this case 63,500, and analyze their sell-through efforts at the point of sale on an hourly basis. What we were also able to do was normalize the data. And this included, we knew what day of the week they worked, we knew what store location they were working in, we knew how long they'd been working in that retail setting, and this allowed us to really get out all of the big outliers and determine what the impact of people that had engaged with content, in this case provided from our company, what that made on the sell-through on the point of sale. So again, 2 years of data, 330 locations, 63,500 associates, a really nice sample size. It's also important to note here that we did not do the data crunching on this. We worked with a gentleman by the name of Marshall Fisher. He's actually quite a well-published individual with a specialty out of Wharton University and a PhD that's really around retail efficiencies. And Marshall was happy to engage in such a large data set and powered a couple of other gentlemen, one out of Dartmouth, also with a PhD, and then someone across the Atlantic in France at INSEAD. And took them several months to crunch through this, but let us just get to a couple of punchlines on this data. The first one was that an associate in the study that had engaged with specific brand content on the Experticity site sold 87% more than their peers. Now, this is a pretty staggering number. I will take a little bit off the impact of this by saying that what we also found is that people who simply raised their hand to look for and log into the site, which provided more content and information around brands in the store, they were already selling more to begin with. The impact, though, of the content was pretty compelling from a manufacturer standpoint. So let's just isolate that particular lift. And what that gave us was, and this is across, just to be clear that this is not across 1 or 2 brands, there was over 190 different manufacturers or brand content available to this audience. And on the average, the pure before and after lift of this content consumption was a 9.5% lift in the point of sale data. So I'm not sure, those of you that are on the phone this morning, where you have levers in your business to move the sales number by 9.5%. I'm assuming that if you had them, you'd be pulling them. But this is a pretty interesting and pretty compelling data point from the study. So what does this mean? What we did is we did basically a back-of-the-napkin ROI calculation on this impact. And so if you'll allow me just to set the groundwork in terms of what an example of this could be, and set out a situation with a brand that sold in 2,000 doors, and in those doors about 20 associates interfacing or selling in that category in the store, and that includes for a factor of turnover. And then if we assume that the content pushed from the platform was only engaged by 33% of those associates, and that the annual revenue of that brand was about $400 million, we want to calculate a couple of things right out of the gate. One is, what does the average person sell in that location, and then what would the person sell who had engaged with our content? So that's what this shows here, with the average or the non-engaged person selling around $7,800 in an annual period. And going back to the data that we found from the study, those that had engaged in content, again, those are the people that showed up to work on time, put the same color socks on, brushed their hair and their teeth, but also were very eager and interested to learn more about the products sold in those locations. They would be selling on average about $14,500 in comparison to those individuals. So let's look at this one other way. Again, same statistics in terms of stores and associates, same percentage in terms of engagement, same size company. What is the lift if we were to deploy content? And if you were a $400 million business and only had a third of the people engage in the curriculum, we're talking about a lift of almost $5 million in an annualized period. So really, really interesting data. Again, kind of proven out by some of the thought leaders in the category, and with a data set that's really difficult to poke holes in. So we're really excited about this type of potential return and the return that we're offering our clients today. So I guess it becomes a question too of, it's interesting to deploy the content, but where are these individuals and how do they differentiate amongst themselves? I would assume, based on the demographic of individuals who would be logged in and listening this morning, that most people are familiar with LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is a great venue that we use professionally to state what it is we've done, how successful we've been. It's a public profile in which people can verify and kind of vet the things that we put out. And that's what we aspire to build for our membership, for these advocates. And this allows us to do it by category and target content based on interest and relevant work location or professional interests and endeavors, and then score individuals based on their knowledge of content consumed, products owned, and experience that they've built. So again, a very interesting thing from a marketing perspective to find who are the people that can be the influential advocates on my behalf. The details, again, I've already touched on, but being able to drill and understand on a very intimate level why are they expert, why are they interesting, and in the future for us, open these individuals up for more two-way communication from brands where they can vet potentially products, marketing programs, and other things that they would like to do where they're considering making significant investments. So I guess this, getting close to the end and wrapping up here, I would just put it in context of this. We deal with hundreds of consumer goods brands who are spending a significant amount of money in their go-to-market plans. And those typically are in the $1 million range in terms of expenditures, not to mention the investments that they're making around product development and R&D. But when you spend that much money to go to market to drive the traffic into the stores, we would say there's a lot of reason to invest also in how effective that conversation is in that retail setting. And so when 10 years of R&D and a $5 million marketing budget rest on one little conversation, that's where you want to make sure that you're influencing those brand advocates. Anyway, hopefully that gave you some things to think about. And I appreciate the investment in time this morning and would welcome any questions as they come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. We do have a few questions that we would like to ask. And one is, you mentioned at the beginning that brands and retailers focus on traffic, conversion, and AOV. Can you elaborate on that a bit further?
Yeah, let me give you an example. We were meeting with a brand. This particular brand was in the sporting goods industry, and they were launching a new shoe. And they estimated that the spend, if they considered all of the marketing investment around it, including television advertising, print advertising, a co-op marketing spend with the retailer to draw people into the store, was right around $7 million. And it's obviously a large amount of money. And when we had the conversation around, well, what are you doing specifically to help the associates in the store to understand and convey the correct message and to be knowledgeable on the product, their answer was limited to field reps, which is fantastic and very, very impactful. But at the scale that this particular brand was sold, their ability to penetrate a significant number of those doors was really limited. And so this is the problem that we aim to solve with our clients is, hey, you spend all these dollars, you spend all this money to generate the traffic. And obviously you can't have a business without traffic in the stores and people asking for the brands. But doesn't it make sense to invest in the conversations to increase the conversion rate and potentially the average purchase values in those settings? And of course, that's where we're finding a lot of traction as a company. Let me elaborate one little other piece on there. If you talk to an e-tail professional, someone who's selling online, and most of the big consumer goods companies are starting down this path, those are the stats of a successful e-commerce site. Traffic, what's the traffic to the site, how and what rate do we convert that traffic, and then simply what's the cart size. And brick and mortar really should be looked at in a similar, if not the same way. And that's what we're talking about today, is making that investment.
Perfect. We have another question here for you, John. I'm still a little unclear on what separates a brand advocate from a regular retail employee. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah. What we would say is that a regular retail employee has the potential to become a brand advocate. And the difference between the two would be a gap of either knowledge and understanding, maybe a thought of some type of connectivity to a brand or some personal a connection through content consumed and maybe time invested. And so what we would say is that from a consumer goods brand perspective, they would hope to create advocacy, product advocacy, and on behalf of with all of those individuals. The difference is how do you make that connection? That could simply be a few minutes of engaged content. It could also go to the extent of potentially having that individual in retail have or own your product and have a personal experience. And with some of the programs that we've seen, that really is another big leverage to increase the advocacy. Is if they use it themselves, then man, they're a lot better equipped to speak to how well it can work for a would-be buyer.
Okay, great. We have another one. Where was the study you referenced actually done? Did your company handle it in-house?
Yeah, actually, just restate that. It was not done by our company. We had gone out, we were referred to an individual out of Wharton, a guy named Marshall Fisher, and who was a published kind of expert, if you will, allow me to use that term on this description, in the category of retail efficiencies. And so Marshall was engaged. We told him what type of data set that we had access to, and as much as you can, as a professor with a bow tie and a big smile and a mustache, get excited about these types of things. Marshall was there, and one of the largest data sets that he had ever had the chance to analyze, and thus the rigor with adding 2 additional PhDs to the study to get the findings. And we were hopeful on the results when the data came back. Obviously, pretty significant numbers, and so very excited. But that's definitely outside the company and carefully chosen resource to analyze.
Great, thank you. Here we have, can you speak more to the profiles you mentioned on slide 14? How are employees signed up, and can I monitor progress?
Yeah, so a lot of our sign up is driven to date by word of mouth. What will happen is we leverage the current reach of a manufacturer into a retail setting. Most cases, consumer goods brands that we partner with already have significant investments in their field staff. And those field staff, when possible, are engaging with associates, maybe only at a store manager level in some cases, but to do trainings, and sometimes that only equates to a couple of times a year. So if we set up with a manufacturer, that field sales force becomes very knowledgeable around what this service can provide, what this media is. They advocate with it at the buyer level in a lot of cases, and sometimes on up. And in other cases, they do have direct interaction in store, and they are using small leave behinds to encourage people to go in and consume content. Once those people come in, we engage with them. We market to them to encourage their associates to join the platform and to get perspective and incentives around that activity. So to date, well over 1 million people in all-time membership. There's obviously a turnover in retail. That's a portion of our audience. So today, several 100,000 active members across tens of thousands of locations.
Okay, John, we have another one for you. Do you offer retail sales staff training? If so, how many hours per retail salesperson do you feel is a need to take an average sales associate to become an engaged one?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. In our medium, which is online delivery, we try to keep the content to manageable or bite-sized increments. So a lot of our staff is trained in e-learning best practices. And what that really drives us to do is be disciplined around packaging the content in certain formats, limiting word counts, and keeping the sessions to about 20 minutes. What we're able to do that the face-to-face interactions are not is we're able to measure it. So what we deliver in behind the content that is consumed by an associate in a store or an industry professional is a quiz. We call it an EduGame. And what the quiz does is it allows the brand to see reporting around, did this individual understand the content that I was trying to convey? And we can give unbelievably detailed data. Let me give you another example. Adidas is a customer of ours in the sporting goods space. This is a $13 billion global company. They have a lot of resources. They had never, ever been able to measure the marketing reach of their content to the retail sales associate. despite having a very large field staff and a big investment. Today, they, like all other brands that consume and push content through the platform, can actually log in and see by retailer, and then by store location, and then by actual individual, first name, last name at that location that consumed this content. So to go back to the start of the question, how much content and how long does it take? Well, brands are doing this in increments, we would say, limited to about 20 minutes, and trying to push fresh content on a regular basis to that audience, which depending on the brand could be 3, 4 plus times in a year, mostly lined up with product launches and seasonal sale opportunities, and the big important areas for that particular brand and times in the year.
Okay, I believe that's the last of the questions. And I'd like to thank everybody for attending the webinar. And John, great presentation. And for those of you who would like to pass this information on or listen to the webinar again, you can go to www.housewares.org in the Knowledge Center. And we will be uploading John's webinar in about 24 hours. In the meantime, John, do you have contact information you'd like to share with the presenters or with the attendees if they'd like to contact you?
Yeah, you know what, I would just maybe direct them to experticity.com. We have a number of pieces on there that some quick overviews in terms of what the service does, a great cross-section of who the clients are today, and we'd be happy to further those conversations. And we'll follow up with some pieces for you to post on the site as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much for everyone's time. John, great presentation, and we hope to see everyone very soon on the next webinar.
Great, thank you.
Have a good day.